The night I operated on my former mother-in-law, the woman who had thrown me out of her son's life 8 years earlier, I promised myself she would be nothing more than another patient. But when she opened her eyes after surgery and whispered, "Forgive me, I did it to save your life," everything I believed about my past shattered in an instant. My name is Natalie Mercer. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon at one of Seattle's busiest trauma hospitals. In my profession, emotions have no place in the operating room. When someone's chest is open on the table, it doesn't matter whether they're a billionaire, a politician, or the person who ruined your life. All that matters is keeping their heart beating. For years, I believed nothing could ever surprise me again. I was wrong. It was almost 2 o'clock in the morning when the trauma pager went off. "Dr. Mercer, ruptured thoracic aorta, female patient arriving in 5 minutes. I grabbed my surgical cap and hurried toward the emergency department. The paramedics burst through the doors, pushing a stretcher at full speed. "Female 61, one of them shouted. "High-speed motor vehicle collision, massive internal bleeding, blood pressure dropping." I stepped beside the stretcher, then I looked at her face. The world stopped. Eleanor Whitmore. 8 years earlier, she'd looked me straight in the eyes and said 5 words I had never forgotten. "You will never marry my son." For several endless seconds, I couldn't hear the alarms. I couldn't hear the nurses. I couldn't hear anyone, only her voice, as clear as if she'd spoken those words a moment ago. "Natalie?" My anesthesiologist's voice snapped me back. "We're losing her." I blinked. I wasn't 26 anymore. I wasn't the young resident crying on the front steps of a mansion. I was the attending surgeon. "Move her to OR3, now." 8 years earlier, I was still a surgical resident. During the day, I worked impossible hours at the hospital. At night, I covered extra shifts at a private clinic just to pay my rent and student loans. Life was exhausting, but I loved medicine. That's where I met Ryan Whitmore. He wasn't a doctor. He was a federal prosecutor with the U.S. Department of Justice. Calm, respectful, the kind of man who held doors open because he genuinely cared, not because he expected praise for it. We never rushed into anything. Our relationship grew slowly. Dinner after long shifts, weekend hikes, late-night conversations that lasted until sunrise. There were no games, no manipulation, no dramatic declarations, just trust. After 2 years together, he proposed. It happened at Cary Park, overlooking the Seattle skyline. He got down on one knee. "I don't want another day without you," he said. I cried before I even answered. Yes. It felt like the beginning of the happiest chapter of my life. I had no idea it would end before it even began. One Saturday afternoon, Ryan invited me to meet his parents. "My mother wants to talk about the wedding," he said with a smile. I was nervous. I bought a modest navy blue dress, baked a homemade apple pie, practiced introducing myself as politely as possible during the drive. The Whitmore estate overlooked Lake Washington. Everything about it screamed old money, perfect gardens, luxury cars, a house so large it barely looked real. When Eleanor welcomed me inside, she smiled warmly. At first, lunch went surprisingly well. Ryan's father asked about medical school. His younger sister joked about how impossible surgeons were to date. For a moment, I thought I'd worried for nothing. Then Ryan's phone rang. "It's work," he said. "I'll be outside for just a minute." The moment the front door closed behind him, Eleanor's smile disappeared. She slowly placed her coffee cup onto its saucer. Then she looked directly at me. Listen carefully. The warmth in her voice was gone. Completely. "Yes? Do you honestly believe you're good enough for my son?" The question caught me off guard. "I love him." She gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "Love doesn't buy influence?" I frowned. "I'm not sure I understand." "My son can marry anyone. Daughters of senators, partners at prestigious law firms, women whose families built fortunes." She leaned closer. "Not a resident physician who still worries about making rent every month." Heat rushed into my face. "If that's how you see me, I'm not finished." She stood, walked around the table, stopped only inches away. I could smell her expensive perfume. "If you truly love Ryan," she said quietly, "leave him." I stared at her. I would never disappear. For a moment, I thought she had to be joking. She wasn't. Just then, the back door opened. Ryan walked inside, smiling. "Everything okay?" His mother instantly smiled back. "Oh, we were just getting to know each other." She looked like a completely different person. I didn't tell him what had happened. I didn't want to start a war between mother and son over one terrible conversation. I convinced myself she'd simply had a bad day. I couldn't have been more wrong. 2 days later, she called me. She wanted to meet alone, against my better judgment. I agreed. We met at a quiet country club cafe. She didn't waste a second. She slid a large envelope across the table. I opened it. Inside was a cashier's check, $60,000. I looked up. "What is this?" Your future. I'm sorry. You'll leave Ryan. I slowly pushed the envelope back toward her. You can't buy me. Her eyes hardened. I wasn't asking. I love your son. She folded her hands calmly. If you refuse, she said, you'll regret it. Something in her voice chilled me, not because she was angry, because she sounded completely certain. For the first time, I felt afraid, not for myself, for Ryan. Over the following days, strange things began happening. Someone followed me after my hospital shifts. I found all 4 tires on my car slashed. My phone rang in the middle of the night. Every time I answered, silence. I kept telling myself they were unrelated, coincidences, until one evening. I was walking back to my apartment after work when a stranger grabbed my arm. He leaned close enough for me to hear his whisper. You're Ryan Whitmore's fiancé. His grip tightened. Tell him to walk away. Then he disappeared into the darkness. I called Ryan immediately. No answer. Again. Nothing. Again. His phone was off. The next morning I went to his office. His assistant looked nervous. Mr. Whitmore is on leave. For how long? I don't know. I drove straight to his parents' house. Eleanor answered before I even rang the bell, almost as if she'd been expecting me. You came. Where's Ryan? Her expression never changed. He doesn't love you anymore. No? You're lying. Without saying another word, she handed me another envelope. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was my engagement ring and a single handwritten note. Don't look for me. It's better this way. I felt my knees buckle. No. This isn't true. Eleanor looked at me without a trace of emotion. It is now. Then she slowly closed the front door, leaving me standing there with my engagement ring in one hand and my entire future collapsing in the other. For 3 months, I lived like a ghost. I buried myself in residency. I stopped answering friends' calls, stopped listening to music, stopped believing in happy endings. The only thing that kept me moving was medicine. Every patient I saved reminded me that hearts could keep beating, even after they had been shattered. Years passed. I finished my residency, completed my fellowship, became one of Seattle's youngest cardiothoracic surgeons. Eventually, the pain stopped feeling sharp. It became something quieter, a scar, one I learned to carry without looking at it. But I never forgot Ryan, or the day his mother destroyed everything we'd built. Now, 8 years later. That same woman was lying unconscious in my operating room. The surgery lasted almost 5 hours. Twice we thought we were going to lose her. Her blood pressure crashed. Her heart stopped once for nearly 40 seconds. But slowly, the graft held. Her heartbeat returned. The monitors stabilized. Finally, it was over. I stepped away from the table, pulled off my gloves, and looked at Eleanor Whitmore. For years, I'd imagined what I would say if I ever saw her again. Now, I didn't want to say anything. I walked out of the operating room without looking back. I thought the past had finally stayed where it belonged. I was wrong. The real nightmare was only beginning. The following morning, I filled every minute with work. Morning rounds, consultations, a scheduled bypass, paperwork, anything except visiting room 512, the room where Eleanor Whitmore was recovering. Around noon, the charge nurse stopped me in the hallway. Dr. Mercer? Yes? Your patient in room 512 keeps asking for you. I'll send another physician. She refuses. I closed my eyes for a second, then nodded. I'll go. She was sitting by the window when I walked in. She looked nothing like the elegant woman I remembered. Her silver hair framed a pale, exhausted face. The confidence she'd once carried was gone. When she saw me, she closed her eyes. I knew it was you. How are you feeling? You saved my life. I'm your surgeon. I turned toward the door. Natalie. Her voice stopped me. Please. I didn't answer. I'm sorry. Slowly, I turned back. Tears were already running down her cheeks. Everything you believed about me, she whispered, was only half the truth. I folded my arms. There's another half? She nodded. I never wanted to keep you away from Ryan. Silence. I kept you away because I wanted you to stay alive. Every muscle in my body tightened. What are you talking about? She reached toward the bedside table. Her hands were trembling. Open the drawer. Inside was an old manila envelope. My name was written across the front, in handwriting I didn't recognize. The seal had never been broken. I slowly opened it. Inside was a photograph. Ryan and me sitting at a coffee shop, taken from far away. Another photograph. Me leaving the hospital after a night shift. Another, me entering my apartment building. Another, me buying groceries. Another, me pumping gas. Every single picture had the same date, 8 years earlier. My heart began racing. Who took these? Eleanor lowered her head. The people Ryan was investigating. I stared at her. Investigating? She nodded. He wasn't just a federal prosecutor. He was working undercover with a joint federal task force. My breathing became uneven. What? For almost 2 years, she whispered. Ryan infiltrated a financial crime organization responsible for laundering hundreds of millions of dollars. I couldn't speak. It wasn't public, and no one outside the investigation knew. Not even me, I whispered. No. Then why? She interrupted me. One night, they mailed those photographs to our house. She closed her eyes. There was a note inside. Her voice broke. It took several seconds before she could continue. It said, "We know who she is. If your son keeps investigating, she'll die first." I felt the blood drain from my face. No, that's impossible. I wish it were. Why didn't Ryan tell me? Because he wasn't allowed to. And because he knew exactly what you would do. I already knew the answer before she said it. You would have stayed. You would have refused to leave him. You would have become an easier target. Tears rolled down her face. So Ryan made the hardest decision of his life. He chose to make you hate him instead of attending your funeral. I couldn't breathe. The room suddenly felt too small. What about the engagement ring? Eleanor closed her eyes. He never returned it. I took it from his office. And the note? I wrote it. I stared at her in disbelief. You? She nodded. I made sure you believed he'd abandoned you. Anger exploded inside me. 8 years. My voice shook. For 8 years, I thought I wasn't enough. I thought he'd stopped loving me. I questioned everything about myself. She didn't defend herself. She simply cried. I know. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But if I'd chosen differently, none of us would be here today. I couldn't listen anymore. I walked out of the room. The hallway spun around me. Everything I believed, everything I'd hated, everything I'd mourned had been built on a lie. That evening, the hospital director called me into his office. Natalie, you have a visitor. I'm not seeing anyone. I think you'll want to see this one. I stepped into the hallway. A man stood with his back toward me, tall, broad shoulders, dark suit, a touch of gray at his temples. For one impossible second, my heart forgot how to beat. Slowly, he turned around. It was Ryan, older, thinner. His eyes carried years of exhaustion, but they were still the same eyes I'd fallen in love with. Neither of us spoke, not at first. Finally, he broke the silence. Hi, Natalie? I could barely find my voice. You're alive. A sad smile crossed his face. I am. Where have you been? For 8 years? He looked down before answering, trying to make sure you'd have a future. For what felt like an eternity? Neither of us moved. I stared at Ryan. He looked older. The sharp confidence I remembered had been replaced by something quieter, the kind of exhaustion that only years of sacrifice could leave behind. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to scream at him. Instead, I slapped him across the face, not hard, just enough to release 8 years of grief. He didn't flinch. I deserved that. You deserved far worse. Tears blurred my vision. Do you have any idea how many nights I blamed myself? How many times I wondered what I'd done wrong? How many times I believed I simply wasn't enough? He lowered his head. Every single day. I wanted to come back. Every day. But if I'd broken my cover, I would have signed your death warrant. Neither of us spoke. The silence hurt more than the words. Finally, Ryan reached into his briefcase and handed me a thick folder. Read it when you're ready. I didn't open it until later that night, alone in my apartment. The first page carried the seal of the U.S. Department of Justice. The next, FBI reports, witness statements, financial records, court filings, wiretap transcripts, photographs, the surveillance pictures Eleanor had shown me. There were hundreds of pages. Every single document confirmed the same story. Ryan had spent nearly 3 years undercover helping dismantle one of the largest money laundering organizations on the West Coast. 23 convictions, millions of dollars seized, dozens of witnesses placed into federal protection. Then I reached the final page. It wasn't an official document. It was a photograph. Ryan, sitting alone inside a small apartment. No luxury, no decorations, nothing except a single picture frame resting on the table beside him. I picked up the photo. Inside the frame was a picture of us, the day he proposed. On the back, written in his handwriting, were the words, "If I ever get the chance to see her again, the first thing I'll do is ask for her forgiveness." I broke down. For 8 years, I'd believed he'd forgotten me. Instead, he'd carried me with him every single day. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. The apartment door opened. It was Eleanor. A nurse was helping her walk. She'd insisted on coming before being discharged from the hospital. She looked at me quietly. "I know you can never give me back the 8 years I stole from you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness." She paused. "But there's something you deserve to know." I remained silent. "I never stopped thinking of you as the daughter I wished I'd had. My greatest mistake wasn't trying to protect you. It was believing I had the right to choose your future for you. I thought I was saving your life, but I condemned you to live with a broken heart." She lowered her eyes. "I'll regret that until my last breath." I looked at the woman I'd hated for nearly a decade. She wasn't powerful anymore. She wasn't frightening. She was simply a mother who had made an impossible decision, a decision that saved my life while destroying all 3 of ours. Slowly, I walked toward her. For several seconds, we simply looked at each other. Then I wrapped my arms around her. She burst into tears. So did I, behind us. Ryan quietly wiped his own eyes. Healing wasn't immediate. There was no magical ending, no perfect reunion. You don't erase 8 years of pain in a single conversation. We started slowly. A cup of coffee, a walk along the Seattle waterfront, dinner, long conversations that lasted late into the night. Sometimes we laughed, sometimes we cried, sometimes we simply sat together in silence. And somehow, that silence no longer hurt. Eleanor came to visit every Sunday. She never tried to rewrite the past, never asked us to forget. She simply tried to be present. Little by little, we became a family again, not because the past disappeared, but because we finally understood it. 6 months later, Ryan took me back to Cary Park, the place where he'd proposed all those years before. The Seattle skyline glittered beneath the evening sky. Without saying a word, he reached into his coat pocket. It was the same small velvet box, the same one. He opened it. Inside was my engagement ring. I kept it every single day. I smiled through tears. I thought I'd lost it forever. I never lost hope. He slowly knelt. "I'm not asking you to forget the past. I'm asking for the chance to build a future." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Then I held out my hand. "This time, nothing will separate us." He slipped the ring onto my finger. And for the first time in 8 years, the future no longer felt impossible. 6 months later, we were married in a small ceremony surrounded only by the people who truly mattered. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I looked toward the front row. Eleanor was crying. After the ceremony, she walked over and hugged me. Then she whispered, "Thank you for saving my heart." I smiled. "I wasn't the only one. You saved mine too. It just took me 8 years to understand it." Sometimes, the people we believe destroyed our lives are carrying burdens we cannot even imagine. Sometimes, love demands impossible sacrifices. And sometimes, the truth arrives years too late, but still manages to heal what time alone never could. If you were in Natalie's place, could you forgive a mother-in-law who stole 8 years of your life to save it? Let me know in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to follow for another unforgettable story tomorrow.